Today, Erin has a bunch of information to share with us, so we're going to get started pretty quickly. At this time, just remember that you can add questions to the chat. Myself and Sherry will be checking the chat, and we will work with Erin to answer them after the recorded session of our presentation. And then please have your cell phones on silent and your microphone on silent. And then I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Sherry to introduce Erin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are very excited to have Erin join us this afternoon to share a little more about ABA. In the spirit of Autism Acceptance and Awareness Month, we always try to look at topics that we get a lot of questions about. So last year we focused on the Autism Waiver Registry and Waitlist process. And for those who know, the waitlist has gotten a little bigger, and it's slowed down. So I think as a result of that, we're getting a lot more questions about ABA. So this month we thought we would target ABA so that those families who are interested in support while they wait for the waiver or they wait for DDA would have something to support themselves and their child or young adults. So we are very grateful for Erin for joining us and being open to share more about what ABA is, how to access it, whether through Medicaid or private health insurance, because we know families have both. And without further ado, because I know Erin has a lot, welcome Erin from Steps Behavioral, and she'll take it from here.
All right. Thanks, Sherry and Heidi. I appreciate you guys having me join, and I'm excited to share what I know and share with all of you so that this could potentially open up some resources for you all and your families. A little bit about me. I'm the founder. Ooh, I'm clicking the wrong. Can I move the slide along, or do you guys move it along? Okay. So a little bit about me. I am the founder and president of Steps Behavioral Health. I started out as a special ed teacher. I'm from Maryland. I taught in Howard County Public Schools for about 10 years and loved it. And I felt a real need for helping families within their homes. I saw a gap as much as I loved teaching, which I truly did. I felt that families really were needing help in home and navigating the school system and also just navigating their everyday lives. Kids would come home from school and it would be just meltdown after meltdown. Getting the kids to school was a challenge. So I decided to go ahead and pursue my BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst certification. It's a postmaster's at the time degree. And then I dove headfirst into starting Steps Behavioral Health. I'm really excited to be here today to share more about ABA and the process of getting your child services. I'm going to speak broadly. I can move on to today's agenda about what ABA is and what it offers, the intake and assessment process, including ASD evaluations, how to access services through insurance, both Medicaid and we'll talk a little bit about private insurance. Key questions to ask when choosing a provider. I would say that not all providers are created equally. So you need to be cognizant and ask questions. And I'm going to give you those questions to ask. And what quality care should look like. Because I think like anything, when you're interviewing a pediatrician for the first time or before you get pregnant, an OBGYN, like knowing the questions to ask is so important. And so I'm going to give you that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about Steps Behavioral Health. There is a little bit in here like specifically like the intake process that I really could only talk to Steps process because that's what I know. But we've worked really hard to streamline our process. So I'm going to share the intake process for Steps. My guess is it's relatively similar in other companies, but I really don't have a base point for that. So you'll hear about Steps intake process, and hopefully they're relatively similar in other companies. So let's move on to talk about a little bit of a background about what is ABA. So ABA is really the study of behavior. At a high level, it is looking at an organism of anything and figuring out why it does what it does within the environment. What we're going to talk about today is how it helps clients or children. When I talk about clients or children, I'm going to talk about the population under 21 years of age, and their environment, both internal, so how their body feels. Is it, do they have a headache or does something hurt in their gut? And then externally, so are the lights too loud? Are things too chaotic for them? Or are demands being placed that are too difficult? Are they not stimulated enough? Making those adjustments to the environment and then using reinforcement to teach new skills and shape new skills. The biggest importance when it comes to ABA is making sure that it's socially meaningful and significant to your child. And that is different for every single person, because what's socially significant and meaningful to me or my family might be very different to you and your family. So that at a high level and very broad view, that's what ABA is. At the next slide, we're going to chat. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper about what it should look like in kind of ABA therapy, kind of at a younger level. And so this is the basics. It's really great teaching. We try to think about it all. So what makes it fun? What makes it engaging for your child as a learner? How are we tracking progress? So we're taking a lot of data. If it's not working, what are we doing to adjust that? And so you'll see we have behavior analysts, and then we have what's called a RBT, a registered behavior technician, that works really one-on-one with your child on a very regular basis and works underneath the BCBA to take the data of what your child is working on, and the behavior analyst and the RBT is analyzing that data to see where improvements are, and they're really tiny steps. And so we can make adjustments to the programming to see better outcomes, more favorable outcomes. And that's kind of where the science piece comes into behavior analysis, because it does fall under a science. We can work on communication skills, social skills, play skills, the not so fun tasks that your children need to do that engages in problem behaviors, that your children are being asked to do. So say they hate brushing their teeth or they hate doing homework. We can work on them in the context of they need to be able to do it without throwing a tantrum. So that's how we work on a lot of those types of skills. So it's more like toleration and working on it that way. So we'll break things down into manageable steps and that way. All right, when it comes to 4 key aspects of ABA, consistency is definitely key. We look at 4 key aspects of applied behavior analysis to ensure effectiveness and sensitivity to each individual's needs. First, for example, defining a tantrum as stomping feet, yelling, and crying helps ensure consistency and how progress is tracked and measured. So what's important about defining, if you say my child is having a tantrum, what's really hard is to know exactly what a tantrum looks like, because what your child's tantrum looks like and what my child's tantrum looks like might be very different. So it's very important to really define specifically what we're observing for that tantrum. What are we objectively defining as the tantrum behavior? So it's, stomping my child's feet and crying and yelling for over 2 minutes or whatever it might be. And then tracking that data. It's very individualized. We're looking at very specific skills. We're looking at what the child's strengths are, what their specific preferences are. So oftentimes we're doing a preference assessment to see, do you prefer the coffee or the water? I want the coffee, but I have to drink the water. So I'm going to drink my coffee first. And then guess what, Erin? You're having your water after because you need to drink the water. So first we're doing coffee and then we're doing water. So that's what we call a pre-MAC principle, which is really a first then strategy that many of you may have heard of. And that's like one key component to ABA. And again, if you've heard that before, again, it's just good teaching. It's something that a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't like ABA. Well, a lot of our teachers and a lot of us as parents are already using ABA. We just don't realize it because we hear ABA, 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 but we don't realize that it's really a lot of common stuff that is already there. The last piece of ABA is this idea of that we're very much trauma informed. So ensuring that we are acknowledging the potential that drama has been in our child's history. We're selecting strategies that 61%, we know that selecting strategies, 61% of adults and 45% of children have experienced at least one traumatic event in their life. So we are very sure, or we're very cognizant to ensure that we are making sure that we're taking the time to build safety and trust. We do a lot of pairing. If you've heard the term, we're going to spend time, oftentimes it's the first week to 2 weeks, sometimes it takes longer, where we're just doing pairing. And a lot of parents will say to us, why are you just playing with my child? Well, the reality is we're not just playing. Playing means we're taking the time to get to know your child, to build a relationship, because I'm not going to get them to do anything. I'm not going to get them to do the hard things without them trusting me and feeling safe with me. I can't do that hard stuff until I have that relationship and that trust. So we're going to spend that time to build that relationship. And if that's not being done, it's a big red flag. So pay attention to that. We're going to promote choice and autonomy. We're going to emphasize skill building. So we have to be building skills. It's a bottom up process. Okay. So all four of these aspects are objective, observable, individualized, and trauma-informed, are foundational in making ABA a compassionate and impactful approach to behavior therapy. So we can move on to the ABCs of behavior. Has anybody heard of the ABCs of behavior? Okay, so I'm going to go into the ABCs of behavior in a minute, but when we understand the why behind the behavior, we can teach better lasting skills. So I'm going to dive right in. Many of you, if you have been around long enough, people might have said, let's take some ABC data. And that's like, oh, why can't you just solve my problem? Well, the reality is I can't solve your problem because I don't know why yes, I see something in chat. Antecedents. Very good, Ivy. I can't see why the behavior is happening, and I need to look for a pattern. We're very scientific here, people. We like to know what the patterns are so we can come up with a really good, strong solution, and we can come up with a really good, strong behavior intervention plan. Okay, so that's part of what's called an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. So let's move on to the next page. Okay, so we're going to talk about the ABCs. So A stands for antecedents, B is for behavior, and C is for consequences. Okay, so antecedents is what happens before. So that's right before the behavior happens. Something has happened. Many people say, oh, it just comes out of nowhere. Okay, I get it. I have children. Sometimes I'm like, where did this come from? Okay, I get it. I know, I've seen it, but there has to have been something that happened. Even if you don't know, like it really seems like it came out of nothing, just try and pay attention to the environment. Maybe you were sitting in the car and the windows were down and the breeze was blowing and the sun. Write that down. Who knows? Maybe a bug flew in the car and you didn't see it. Maybe was it at 12 o'clock and they hadn't had lunch? I don't know. The reality is write that information down because the next day you could be sitting in the car at the same time and the same behavior could happen. And we could start to see a pattern. At 12 o'clock, this behavior is happening. And oh, maybe they're hungry. So maybe we can start to see a pattern. So I get it. Sometimes we like have no idea. But the writing down of the behaviors we can start to see patterns. And so that's like, I'm jumping a little bit, but that's the importance of why the data collection is important. Behavior is any observable action. So it's crying, screaming, yelling. Be as specific as you can. I have a really nice checkoff sheet because I don't know about you, but we're really busy and writing everything down can be really hard. So if you're working with a behavior analyst, you can adjust them. Mine is very adjustable. So you can say like they're having a tantrum and then define tantrum at the bottom of, whatever your tantrum is, or we'll bite, or we'll be sitting in the car, or we'll be, so it's not, you're not writing everything out because nobody's got time for that. And then consequence, I screamed at my kid. I took away the iPad. I put them in the room. Whatever the consequence is, write it down. So this is going to help us determine the reason for the behavior. We're going to start to see patterns. Is it escape? What is the reason that this happens? And we are going to gather this information again to see patterns. Okay, it's a lot. I'm going to move on to an example. All right, so here are two examples. The first is a mom tells the child to put away the iPad. Has anybody ever done that to your children? I bet you have. The behavior, child yells no and begins to cry. I bet that's happened too. Crying is just the smallest of the behaviors that I decided to put on there. All right, the consequence. Mom tells a child they can play for a few more minutes. Yes, moms, we've all done that. Example 2, antecedent. Child sees dads eat a piece of candy. Child cries and falls to the floor. Dad says, no candy before dinner. Thanks, Dad. All right, now we're going to go to our next slide of 4 reasons behavior happens. So let's think about those 2 examples, and we're going to come back to them. And let's think about the 4 functions. I like to remember this as take a seat. So seat is an acronym for sensory, which is our internal or external sensations or stimulations. Escape, which is from tasks or activities. I want to actually circle back to sensory, internal or external sensations or stimulation. So internal could be a headache, stomach pain, something that like we can't see, but our child feels or we feel as a human. Attention. So we're trying to get attention from others, whether in a good way or a bad way. And then tangible, which is access to something. So we want the toy, we want the iPad, we want the book, we want mom, we want our siblings, we want somebody. Okay, can we move on to the next? Okay, so now we're going to go back to our examples. Does anybody want to take a stab at what the first example's function is? You can write it in the chat. So it's child sees dad eat a piece of candy. Child cries and falls to the floor. And dad says no candy before dinner. It's tangible. Yep. Okay. And number 2, this is actually a different example, so I apologize. Child has free play. Child spins. Oh, wait, let me just see. Can you click? Do one click. Yes, access. Good job. Okay. Child has free play. Child spins around in circles in the room. Child spinning is uninterrupted. What do we think that function might be? This is a tricky one. Sensory. Yeah, Michaela, good job. Yeah, they're getting something from that spinning. They're getting some level of spinning. Okay. All right. Now we're going to go to the next slide. All right, we're going to keep going with, we've got three more. Oh, I really messed these up, so I apologize for these. All right. Mom tells child to put away the iPad. Child yells no and begins to tantrum. Mom gives in and tells the child they can play for a few more minutes. Which one is that?
Should I go ahead and click?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Escape. Yeah. So the child is trying to escape. Hold on. Okay, this is interesting. I messed up here and I'm going to tell you why. The mom tells, I was thinking about the mom. The mom tells the child to put, can we see the function slide again? Yeah, you can go back. It's, yeah, it's two more. The function slide, so it's sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So with that one specifically, the mom tells the child to put away the iPad. The child yells no and begins to tantrum. Mom gives in and tells the child, well, okay, they're escaping, trying to get out of having to do the demand of putting away the iPad. I was thinking they're trying to access, but they already have it. I was also thinking the mom in the front in the beginning gave in, and so she was escaping her own situation where she didn't want to deal with the child's behavior. So she was like, sure, take a couple more minutes. We've all done that. I sure as heck have. And I think this is the one that I switched out, and I switched it out incorrectly. Yeah, this piece of candy we've already done. So you could just give us that one. Okay. We're going to go on to teaching appropriate behaviors and teaching appropriate replacement behaviors. They're also called verbs. So here, there is a mom is on the phone, and there is a behavior, which is the lovely child starts playing at her feet, crying and grabbing her shoes. Mom tries to ignore, but gets frustrated and screams, "I'm on the phone." Okay, so in this slide, we're examining a situation where a child is seeking attention from their mom, who is on the phone. The child plays at her feet, grabs her clothes, and cries, which eventually leads to the mom getting frustrated and shouting. This scenario highlights how the child's behavior is driven by the attention for the desire for attention. Okay, we all been there? Now, it's important to recognize that the child has learned that the behavior often gets a response. The key here is to teach the child a more appropriate way to seek attention. Instead of reinforcing the unwanted behavior, we can guide the child to use positive actions that will meet their needs for attention. Okay, so What we need to do is come up with a strategy. And this is something that the BCBA is going to help you with, and oftentimes even a speech pathologist, which we work really closely with, to come up with a strategy. Oftentimes it is going to be through some level of communication, to teach them a different way to communicate this. So by understanding the function of the behavior, in this case, attention seeking, we can introduce replacement behaviors. These are positive actions that the child can use to appropriately gain attention to the mom without causing frustration. This approach not only helps the child learn behavior and better social skills, but also reduces stress for both the child and the parent. Remember, the goal is to shift from a reactive to a proactive approach, equipping the child with the right tools to communicate effectively and positively. This may look different for each child. So for some children, say your child is a vocal verbal child, they might say, "Mama, play now." For a child who is not verbal, but maybe uses signs, they might say, "Mama, play." For a child who is using a picture card, I don't have text with me right now, but maybe they're handing over a picture and saying, "Play." For a child who's using a device, they might take their iPad and say, "Mama, play." Okay, so that's going to look different, and um, that's where the individualization is going to happen. Okay, and for some kids, it might be a four-length utterance of 4 words. For some kids, it might just be play, and that's where they're at, and that's okay. We're going to build on that, and it's that part is individualized. So we're going to reinforce that depending on where they are, and we're going to build up. So don't worry about that. All right, we're going to move to the next, please. Okay, so now just to give you guys an overview of some functionally equivalent replacement behaviors based on function. So if we look at, here are just some, this is not an extensive list, but if we're looking at the functions of access and attention, here is a little bit more of an extensive list of skills for if your child is showing behaviors that fall into the access category. So we can teach them to wait. Okay, many of our children don't wait well. Many of our adults don't wait well. So that's something that we need to think about. Following and using a schedule. Know when access is available. So I'm sorry, you can't have your iPad now, but you can have it after you do your homework or after you eat your breakfast. So knowing that that's coming is something that, learning how to use a schedule so that they can see it and know that it's coming. Asking for a preferred item. Accepting an alternative item. I'm sorry, coffee's not available, but your water is available right now. Asking for more time. Can I have 5 more minutes? I would rather have 5 more minutes than asking for 5 more minutes than a tantrum. Using a social script. That's not technically a verb. That comes from Michelle Garcia Winner, who is a speech pathologist, but it is a really strong strategy for many kids. So utilizing social scripts and social stories can often be utilized to teach these types of skills. Then skills to teach and gain attention, requesting attention. So, Mom, I want to play. Dad, I want to play. Learning to join into a group, which is a whole different ball of wax, but that is something that a lot of our children need help with. I have to tell you, a lot of typical children need help with learning how to play with others on a playground or outside. It's a challenge. Asking for help, waiting for attention, following and using a schedule. So if you can see, a lot of these skills help with, they cross over. But they help with different things. So these are typical skills that you will see in ABA programming that we work on. And we can move on to the next slide, where we're going to talk about escape and sensory verbs. So asking for a break. ask to delay a task. So in the beginning, for some kids, we're going to teach them, we might teach them how to ask for a break. And in the beginning, we might say, sure, you're going to get a break automatically every single time they ask for a break. And some people might be like, okay, they're spending their entire session on a break. Well, the reality is we need to really reinforce that so they know the power of it. Good programming will then pair that up with a wait test. So you can have a break in 1 minute. So then you can have a break in 2 minutes, in 5 minutes. So you can't have a break now, but you can have a break after we do this work. So you trust the process. It is a process. It's not going to be immediately, but we have to teach those skills in order to decrease. The reality is we want to decrease those challenging, aggressive behaviors that we are trying to, um, you know, eliminate. Saying all done or no thank you, requesting help, following and using schedules again, toleration. So tolerating that some places might be a little louder. That can be hard. What are we going to utilize instead? What are some coping strategies? So teaching them how to say, take some deep breaths or, some different calming strategies. And then we have our teaching to gain sensory strategies. So similar sensory experiences. So if a child is, say, chewing on their hands or chewing on their arms or chewing on, shirts, we might give them a chewy. Oftentimes, we will speak with and collaborate very closely with our occupational therapists because there's very much of an overlap. A lot of us have a lot of experience working with OTs, so we know some of the we know a lot of the typical things. But so following and using a schedule. A lot of times, we have gyms in all of our clinics where the kids can climb on walls and go on swings and play. We want to make it fun. So kids need that time. That is part of their development. We all need to get up and move. And so building that into their natural time is so important. So we're going to learn that about our kids and see, like, how much do they need in order to function, to help, keep their sensory system in check, so that they can focus on whatever it is that they need. I say here, to teaching a competing skill. So instead of spinning on the ground, teach them how to sit, to do a sit and spin, or I'm sorry. I said instead of spitting on the ground, teaching them how to spit like into a napkin. That might be more appropriate, depending on where they are. Okay, you can move on from that. All right, so now we're going to talk about incentivizing replacement behavior. So ideally, we'll incentivize the newly learned replacement behavior by giving something preferred for a child who has demonstrated the skill. So I want you to think about these as, it's super critical to reinforce very quickly. Waiting for a reinforcement for many of these kids, it gets lost. So being very quick, they did something, they get a reinforcement, is really, really important when we're just learning a new skill. You can start delaying that as as the skill is less novel, but in the beginning, it's very, very crucial. One of the things and the keys here is to provide something the child prefers and finds rewarding, so that they are excited to continue to do it. So, I always tell people, you don't go to work every day thinking that you're not going to get a paycheck at the end. You're going to work because you're going to get the paycheck. So it's like they're getting their paycheck. And, we definitely work to ensure that they become more age appropriate and more sustainable. We know that some kids really will only work in the beginning for a piece of candy. We don't love those. We know the health benefits are not great there. So we're going to work towards pairing that with another thing like a high five or a good job, but that's going to take time, and we're going to decrease the piece of candy for that. Good question. What are the estimated timelines and range for when the child learns this? Good question. I let's circle back to that question afterwards. It's honestly, it's very dependent. I see it more for much younger kids. Let's, Sherry, will you remind me to come back to that question afterwards? Okay. Okay. Reinforcement. Common types of positive reinforcement is our next slide. So praise and compliments. That is what we're working towards. That is I would say the most typical of what kids are going to get in typical school. That's the easiest. It's the cheapest. That's what we're working for our kids. We all know that many of our children don't give two hoots about praise and a compliment. So we're going to have to up our ante a little bit with some of it. So we're working on some other things. Some kids like high fives, tickles, and smiles. Some do not. Some kids that I've worked with do not want you to touch them. Others love it. So you just have to know your clients. Some want money, some wants tokens, some wants food, some wants toys and electronics and videos, and I've seen it all. I had one parent years ago who walked into my classroom and gave me an entire stack of Laurie Berkner CDs. And she became our background noise for the year. So it just depends. Alternatively, what I'd like to share is that we can remove something non-preferred after a child has demonstrated the skill as a way to incentivize the behavior. For example, if a child completes his homework without engaging in challenging behavior, he can avoid his chore for that day. So for some learners, they're going to be able to make that connection. It's not all learners, but some learners are going to get that. Like, congratulations, you did a great job on your homework. You don't have to do this. I got that for you. And they're going to be really excited about that. Some learners that are at a level where they need very black and white, it's not going to land. So you just, again, this is where the individualization happens. You need to know the age of your child. Those are younger children are not going to understand that. That's going to be a preteen, higher school age child, and our teenagers might get that. Tips for using reinforcement and incentivizing behavior. Again, immediate is important. Something that's very motivating for your child. This is going to change. Your child will satiate. We all satiate. Sometimes I want chocolate ice cream. Other times I absolutely do not want chocolate ice cream. So just like them, just like us, they will satiate. And a good BCBA team and a good RBT team is going to do preference assessments on a regular basis. They're going to pay attention to what your kids are playing with. They're going to talk to you about what are they into? What are they going towards? And preference assessments can look very different. There are very structured preference assessments, and then sometimes it's just watching your child play and seeing what they go to. So there's different kind of levels of how to check and see what your kids are into. So, yeah. And then again, once the biggest thing to remember is once the child has learned that specific skill, you need to fade that specific reinforcer. Because if not, it's going to lose that value. Okay.
We're about 5 minutes to the end of the recording portion.
Oh boy. All right. All right. I'm going to slide quickly into the intake process, just so you guys have a bit of an idea, and I'm going to run through the rest of it. For intake, you're going to call. This is for steps specifically, but you just need to call. You call, email, or visit the website. You're going to schedule a call, receive the intake packet. We'll check your benefits. Our timeline is about 3 weeks to get an average assessment once our paperwork is done, and then start to treatment is about 2.5 months. That's from the start of the intake process. Okay, so we're pretty quick with our turnaround time. Before initial assessment, our team will ensure we have all the necessary paperwork. We're going to check your benefits. We do suggest that you just check in with, good question, Amber. We are going to check your benefits. We will get a confirmation email detailing the appointment logistics. I'm going to get to you, Amber. Your provider will review the intake paperwork and get an authorization for an individual evaluation. I am going to send this so that you know what to do at the day of your evaluation. Oh, can you move on?
Yes.
Okay, I went through that slide. Go through the day of initial evaluation. This is this information, and then the nitty gritty. Keep going. We'll see if we can get this out to you.
Yeah.
So assessment day, the BCBA is going to come out. They're going to do the assessment. You're going to ask questions. They're going to start a functional behavior assessment. There's going to be a lot of conversation going on. It's about 1 to 2 hour session. Keep going because I want to answer some of what happens after your assessment is your BCBA is going to take all of the data and draft. What I want to do is how to access services through insurance. Yeah, that page. Okay, so insurance details. You need your insurance card. You do in Maryland need a medical diagnosis of autism. For Medicaid, you need a comprehensive diagnostic evaluation that is 3 years or less. We will help you with your process. So our intake team is fantastic. They will tell you if you need something else. We will also reach out to your doctors or the diagnostic team and help get your report if you do not have it. So we'll just get a release of information. If you got it at Kennedy Krieger, we have a direct relationship with them that we can get it from them. So
Erin,
don't stress, we'll help you. I'm
can
sorry?
you clarify what a qualified health
Healthcare
professional
provider?
because I know this is where we've had
Yes.
families get
Yep.
stuck.
Yep. It's a developmental pediatrician, a child psychologist, a neuropsychologist, a clinical psychologist, pediatric neurologist, pediatrician, or nurse practitioner with specific training and experience with developmental autism. Oh, I'm sorry, with diagnosing autism. Okay. And then for Medicaid only, you need a referral for ABA therapy from a qualified healthcare provider made within the past 6 months. Again, we will review your paperwork and tell you if you need one of these things. So you can send it to us and be like, help me. So we have all of that for you. So don't stress. We'll help you. Can you go to the next page?
Yeah.
Here's some more information about private insurance. We take Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, UHC, all the big private insurances. They're a little bit easier to get through. We take Medicaid, which is 21 and under. There's no out-of-pocket cost for Medicaid, typically administered through Carelon Behavioral Health. We do also do self-funded. I try really hard not to. While some self-funded employer plans are not mandated by state laws, federal parity laws may still apply. When I said state self-funded, some families try and pay us directly. Contact us if you have specific questions about it. We can talk about it. I have also done some situations. I've worked with some attorneys that for families who have had kids who need who have for school needed to get extra time for school, and they've come to us to get those services. So we've taken some different cases, but for the most part, we take insurance. And then some key questions when choosing a provider. If I could have just a few minutes to look at that, just so you guys can see that. That's okay. Key
And you're
questions.
welcome to add questions to the chat. We can keep going. You're fine.
Okay. Key questions when choosing a provider. So fit and availability. Do you serve clients in my area? What ages do you serve? Do you provide in-home or clinic-based therapy? What insurances do you take? Just make sure that they take insurances. You can also call your insurance provider and just verify. I always recommend that. Like I said, we check, we get a verification of benefits, we will send it to you, but it's always good to verify. Okay, you can go to the next one. About the organization. These are really important questions to ask. Are they BCBA owned and operated? Many are not. So just check, because a BCBA owned and operated, they're worried about their license. They're making sure that they're ethical. They should be. They should really be checking to make sure. What does training look like for your clinical team? Are they doing ongoing training? Do they know what they're doing? How much supervision do your RBTs receive? What do I do if I'm unhappy with my clinical team? Okay, so these things are going to come up. What I would say is, if they don't have a strong answer, use that as a red flag. I've always told people, if you're unhappy with your clinical team, which absolutely happens, call us, because we can make adjustments. I have 50 BCBAs on my team. I have plenty of RBTs on my team. We can make adjustments, and we do that. And sometimes the person is just not the right fit for the family, but we have a whole team I'll give you that, Lenny, to make those adjustments. The number is 443-353-9547 for us. Okay. So those are really big ones. And then getting started, what is the typical wait time to begin therapy? That's a good question to ask. How will the team communicate with me, and how will I be involved in therapy? You want to know, how are you going to be, what are the expectations that you can expect from your organization? Okay. And then, what should quality ABA look like? I can send this. Just remember, your voice matters. If you get that gut, please, like that gut feeling that doesn't feel good, pay attention to it. See if you can get some more answers. And if you're not getting a good answer that doesn't feel right, pay attention to it. See if you can take a tour of the center. If they're not willing to give you a tour, like, why? Therapy that fits into real life. Can you go into your home? Will they come into your home? Can you go into a clinic? You are a part of the team. Like, you need to be updated. You should be let know what's going on. Supervision that you can count on. Are you hearing from your BCBA? Are you a part of that conversation? And then here's a bunch of red flags and green flags. And we can maybe just put that in the chat. Would that be helpful?
I will send the slides, if that's okay with you, to everyone that's here.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is more specific information about steps.
And Sherry added your information to the chat as well. So thank you, Sherry.
Excellent. And it's also, I have the last 3 slides. I have a steps pathway. We see kids from 2 to 21. We have our early steps. If you go to the steps pathway, we have early steps is from 2 to 5. Our rising steps is from 6 to 13. And our next steps is from 14 to 21 years of age. So we provide services for all age groups. Our community liaison is really for our partners. I would do Office at Steps BCBA for families. That's going to take you directly to our, oh, I should have probably said that. Yeah, referrals email is for our families. Okay, so now, if you want, I'm happy to answer all the questions, because I ran through that last bit as fast as I could.
You're fantastic.
Okay.